Hey everyone, quick thing before we dive in. I was looking at my analytics and it turns out most of the people watching aren't actually subscribed. See this? Way more views than subscribers. If you're enjoying the videos and want to see more, hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow and you'll never miss new uploads. Alright, let's get into it.
I checked the temperature gauge for the third time in 10 minutes. 37.8 degrees Celsius, exactly where it should be. My basement lab hums with the quiet efficiency of precision. 2 monitors, whiteboards covered in hereditary charts, and 67 eggs arranged in labeled incubation trays. Each one represents weeks of careful planning, selective breeding, mathematical perfection. Displaying spreadsheets. The Genesis Mark 7. Incubator arrived this morning, shipped in a box that smells faintly of industrial lubricant and cheap foam padding. Third-party refurbished, but the seller's reputation on BreederNet speaks for itself. 4.8 stars, hundreds of positive reviews. Adaptive albumin feature improves hatch rates by 23%, the product description promised. For half the price of retail, I couldn't afford to pass it up. I peel away the factory sticker, sterile until opened. Factory batch 7B120. The ritual matters. Every piece of equipment in my lab has its documentation. I press the sticker into my breeding log, next to the serial number I've already recorded in neat block letters. Everything must be tracked, measured, controlled. The incubator's interior gleams under LED strips that cycle through the appropriate light spectrum. Micro-injectors line the walls like tiny surgical instruments, ready to deliver precise doses of protein cartridges. Temperature sensors, humidity controls, rotation mechanisms, all connected to firmware that monitors every microscopic detail of embryonic development. This machine doesn't just incubate eggs, it optimizes them. I place my first test subject inside. A Charmander egg I imported from a breeder in Giotto, promising 31 perfect IVs in attack and speed. The shell has that telltale orange-red tinge that marks superior genetics. Through candling, I can see the shadow of healthy development, the dark spot of the forming embryo, blood vessels branching like hairline cracks through translucent calcium carbonate. The incubator's scanner runs its first diagnostic. Biometric readings scroll across the display. Shell thickness 0.7 millimeters, porosity index normal. Embryo heartbeat steady at 182 beats per minute. All parameters within expected ranges. I log the data in my spreadsheet and set the first rotation cycle. This is what separates serious breeders from weekend hobbyists. They collect Pokemon like trading cards, satisfied with whatever randomized stats chance provides. I engineer perfection. Every IV, every nature, every ability, calculated and controlled. My teams don't just win battles, they dominate with mathematical certainty. The incubator settles into its rhythm, a soft mechanical whisper that blends with the ambient hum of climate control systems. I check the nutrient cartridge levels, full. The rotation timer, set for 12-minute intervals. The containment gauge glows steady green, confirming optimal chamber pressure. Except there. For just a moment, the gauge flickers amber. I lean closer, watching the display. Green, steady green. Probably just a calibration hiccup from the shipping. Third-party equipment sometimes needs a settling period. I make a note in my log. 1834, brief amber reading on containment gauge. Monitor for recurrence. The Charmander egg completes its first rotation, shell gleaming under the LED strips. Nothing unusual visible, though the scanner shows slightly elevated porosity readings. Still within acceptable parameters, but worth tracking. I run my finger along the incubator's rim, checking for any gaps in the seal. My fingertip comes away with a thin film of something slick, almost oily. Condensation, most likely. I wipe my finger on a cloth towel and toss it toward the laundry bin. It catches on the rim and hangs there, a white flag in my sterile laboratory. I'll deal with it later. Right now, the egg demands my attention. Through the transparent aluminum viewing window, I watch the shell's surface. The orange-red coloration seems to pulse slightly, synchronized with something I can't quite identify. Probably the embryo's heartbeat creating subtle pressure variations. The scanner confirms normal cardiac rhythm, though there's an odd echo in the waveform, like a second heartbeat, fainter but perfectly timed. I press my wrist against the cool metal housing of the incubator, feeling its vibration through my bones. The pulse there matches the echo exactly. Interesting? Some kind of resonance effect between my circulation and the machine's sensors. I make another note: possible sensor sensitivity to operator proximity. Test with various distance measurements. The basement feels warmer than usual. I check the climate control, 22 degrees Celsius, unchanged. Maybe it's just the excitement of testing new equipment. I've waited 3 months to afford this upgrade, saving money by buying generic protein cartridges and cutting back on my BreederNet premium subscription, worth every sacrifice to finally have professional-grade incubation capabilities. A soft chime indicates the first micro-audit completion. The incubator has mapped every millimeter of the shell's surface, cataloged every microscopic imperfection, calculated optimal injection points for tomorrow's nutrient supplementation. The data streams across my monitors in endless columns of numbers that most people would find incomprehensible. To me, they're poetry. I smell something sweet in the air, custard-like, with an organic warmth that doesn't belong in my sterile environment. Probably just the new plastic components off-gassing under the heat lamps. Manufacturing residue burns off during the first few operating cycles. Nothing to worry about. The containment gauge flickers amber again, just for a split second. I mark the time, 1947. 2 amber readings in 90 minutes might indicate a pressure seal issue. I'll check the manual tomorrow, maybe contact technical support if it continues. For now, everything else reads normal. I climb the stairs to make dinner, leaving the incubator to its work. The Charmander egg sits in its cradle, shell gleaming under precisely calibrated light. Every detail monitored by sensors that cost more than most people's monthly rent. In 12 hours, I'll have the first round of development data. In 6 days, if everything goes perfectly, I'll witness the birth of genetic perfection. Behind me, the lab hums with electronic contentment. The egg rotates on schedule, bathed in optimal temperature and humidity. The micro-injectors remain primed for tomorrow's protein delivery. The egg ruptures at 6:23 a.m., while I'm adjusting the humidity controls for the morning cycle. One moment, I'm fine-tuning the atmospheric moisture to 64%. The next, I'm staring at viscous amber fluid splattered across my wrist and the incubator's rim. The liquid is hot, not burning, but uncomfortably warm, like touching fever skin. It has the consistency of raw egg yolk mixed with honey, thick enough to cling, but fluid enough to spread. "Damn," I whisper, the first profanity I've allowed myself in months. Contamination is the enemy of controlled breeding. Every variable must be measured, every surface sterile. I grab the same towel from yesterday and scrub at my wrist, trying to remove the amber residue before it can affect anything else in the lab. The fluid seems to sink into my skin rather than wipe away, leaving a faint sticky film. I rub harder until my skin turns red, but the sensation remains, a subtle warmth that pulses in rhythm with my heartbeat. The Charmander egg is ruined, its shell collapsed inward like a punctured balloon. Instead of a developing embryo, there's only more of that strange amber substance pooling in the bottom of the incubation chamber. I document the loss in my breeding log. Day 2, complete shell failure, unknown amber substance present, cause, equipment malfunction, or genetic abnormality. I should call Genesis technical support. I should report the anomaly to BreederNet's equipment failure database. But admitting the failure means admitting imperfection in my process, and I've built my reputation on never making mistakes. This has to be a random genetic fluke. Third-party equipment is reliable. Thousands of breeders use refurbished incubators without problems. I dispose of the ruined shell and thoroughly clean the incubation chamber with industrial-grade disinfectant. The amber residue dissolves reluctantly, leaving faint streaks that catch the light. 3 complete cleaning cycles before I'm satisfied. I load a new Charmander egg, backup stock from the same breeding pair, and reset all parameters to factory defaults. By afternoon, I notice the smell, sweet custard scent that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, strongest near the incubator, but detectable throughout the lab. I check all the nutrient cartridges, no leaks. I inspect the climate control system, no unusual odors, yet the smell persists, growing stronger each time I return from upstairs. My fingertips feel strange, warmer than normal, with a subtle tingling that makes fine motor control more difficult. I drop my stylus twice while updating spreadsheets. My handwriting looks shaky in the breeding log, letters trailing off into illegible scrawls. Stress response, most likely. The equipment failure has disrupted my routine, thrown off my mental equilibrium. But the incubator is working perfectly now. The replacement egg shows healthy development, embryo heartbeat strong, shell integrity optimal, all biometric readings within expected parameters. Whatever caused this morning's failure was clearly isolated to the first egg. Genetic abnormality, not equipment malfunction, the logical explanation. Except the containment gauge keeps flickering amber. At 11:34 p.m., I'm reviewing tomorrow's breeding schedule when I hear it. A soft mechanical whir from the incubator, different from the normal rotation cycle. Through the viewing window, I see the micro-injectors moving in patterns I didn't program, extending and retracting like tiny fingers, exploring the air inside the chamber. I check the firmware logs. Nothing unusual recorded. The system shows normal operation, rotation on schedule, temperature stable, nutrient delivery pending tomorrow's protocol. But the injectors continue their strange dance, guided by subroutines that don't appear in any menu. I power down the incubator for 30 seconds, then restart. The injectors return to their idle positions. Normal operation resumes. I add another entry to my log. Possible firmware glitch in micro-injector control. Monitor for repeat occurrence. My skin feels papery where the amber fluid touched it this morning. I roll up my sleeve and examine my wrist under the lab's bright LED strips. The area looks normal. No discoloration, no obvious irritation. But when I press my fingers to the spot, it feels different. Thicker somehow, like the skin has been replaced with a fine membrane, and warm. I scratch at it absently while reviewing breeding charts, leaving tiny flakes of dead skin on my desk. More than usual, though I haven't been particularly active, I sweep the flakes into the trash and apply hand lotion. Dry basement air affects everyone differently. The next morning brings another discovery. Moisture condensation inside the incubator that wasn't there before. Perfect spherical droplets clinging to the chamber walls, too uniform to be natural condensation. They catch the light like tiny lenses, refracting the LED spectrum into rainbow patterns. Beautiful, but wrong. I document everything. Temperature readings, humidity levels, visual observations. The data tells one story, normal operation within all parameters. My eyes tell another. Something is changing inside that chamber, something the sensors can't detect or the firmware doesn't recognize. The replacement Charmander egg looks healthy, shell coloration proper, candling reveals normal development. But when I watch closely, I swear the embryo's movement doesn't match the heartbeat readings on screen. Too synchronized, too rhythmic, like it's moving to music only it can hear. I press my palm against the incubator housing, feeling for vibration patterns that might explain the discrepancy. The pulse I detect matches my own heartbeat exactly. Not an echo or resonance, perfect synchronization, as if the machine has learned to mirror my biological rhythm. That night, I dream of amber fluid flowing through transparent tubes, guided by invisible currents toward a destination I can't see. I wake with the taste of custard in my mouth, and the feeling that something fundamental has changed while I slept. The lab looks identical in the pale morning light, but the smell is stronger now, sweet and organic, with an undertone that reminds me of hospitals. The incubator hums its familiar tune, maintaining perfect environmental conditions for the development of new life. Inside the chamber, condensation beads gather and coalesce, forming patterns that almost look intentional, almost look like cells dividing. I check my breeding log and realize I've been unconsciously wiping the same cloth against the incubator rim every time I perform maintenance. The cloth is stained now with faint amber streaks that never quite wash out. I should throw it away. Start fresh with sterile materials. Instead, I fold it carefully and place it in my pocket. Some instinct I can't name tells me it might be important later. I arrive in the lab at 6 a.m. to find a perfect unmarked shell sitting in the secondary incubation chamber, a chamber I distinctly remember leaving empty. The egg is approximately the size of a standard Charmander egg, with a shell that gleams like polished ceramic. No visible pores, no texture variation, nothing to indicate natural formation. the incubator's logs show no record of its creation. According to the system, Chamber 2 remains empty. But the egg is real, solid, warm to the touch when I override the safety locks and lift it from its cradle. It weighs exactly what a Charmander egg should weigh, yet feels wrong in my hands. I place it under the candling light. Instead of the familiar shadow and vein pattern of developing life, I see something else. A tiny silhouette that looks disturbingly different, more like a human embryo than any Pokemon I've ever bred. The shape is barely formed but unmistakable, with the beginning outline of a head and limb buds that don't match any species in my breeding catalog. When I return to the lab the next morning, the egg has grown noticeably larger, now almost twice the size of yesterday. My first thought is to document this impossible growth rate, but as I reach for my breeding log, I notice more skin flaking from my arms than the day before. Small patches are becoming visible now, areas where my skin looks papery and translucent. The candling reveals dramatic development of the embryo inside. What was a rudimentary shape yesterday now has defined limbs and a recognizable head. The growth rate defies all biological norms I've studied. According to my calculations, whatever is developing inside should take weeks to reach this stage, not hours. More concerning is what's happening to my workspace. The dead skin I've been shedding is nowhere to be found. Not in my trash bin, not under my desk, not in the corners where air currents might have carried it, as if something has been collecting it deliberately. The custard smell grows stronger, and the amber flashes on the containment gauge more frequent. When I check the first incubator, the Charmander egg appears normal on all readings. By the third morning, I'm significantly weaker. The patches on my skin have spread across most of my body, and I find myself leaving a trail of flakes wherever I go. My clothing hangs looser, as if I'm losing mass that's being transferred elsewhere. The mysterious egg now fills the entire secondary chamber, having expanded to over 3 times its original size. Through the candling light, I see a fully formed human figure curled inside, a fetal position with arms wrapped around knees. At 3:47 p.m., I witness the first microfracture. A hairline crack appears at the egg's apex, so thin it's barely visible under normal lighting. But when I adjust the LED angle, I can see through the gap. Something moves inside, not the random twitching of a developing Pokemon, but deliberate coordinated motion, fingers flexing, an eye opening to stare directly at me. My heart rate spikes, and the incubator's biometric sensors respond immediately. Alert indicators flash as the system detects elevated stress readings from somewhere in the lab. The micro-injectors extend toward the cracked egg, drawn by signals I don't understand and can't control. I try to shut down the system, but the power controls don't respond. Emergency stop, system reset. Even unplugging the main power cable, nothing works. The incubator continues operating on some internal power source that wasn't in any documentation. Then I notice something disturbing. Tiny amber filaments spreading through the lab's electrical wiring, creating new connections between the incubator and my main computer system. The infection isn't just biological, it's technological, integrating itself with my equipment and accessing my databases. My vision blurs as I stagger to my computer. On screen, I see files being accessed at impossible speeds. Breeding records, research papers I've collected, even personal journals. The amber organism is learning, absorbing everything I know and more. It's connecting patterns I never saw, synthesizing knowledge from disparate sources I've accumulated over years. The egg cracks wider, steam rises from the gap, carrying that familiar custard scent mixed with something new, the smell of birth, of emergence, of change. Through the opening, I glimpse wet flesh the color of human skin. A hand that looks exactly like my own pushes through the shell fragments. I collapse against the machine's housing, feeling the vibration of its internal mechanisms through the metal. The pulse is stronger now, more urgent, perfectly synchronized with the amber glow spreading through my veins. The figure inside the egg looks at me through the transparent viewing window. Its face is my face, down to the small scar on my left eyebrow from a childhood accident. But the eyes are different. Ancient, calculating, filled with intelligence that feels utterly foreign. It smiles with my mouth and begins to push itself free from the confining shell. I stagger toward the incubator, desperate to intervene before whatever's inside can fully emerge. but my legs won't support my weight properly. My heart stutters, then races, then stutters again as the amber infection reaches critical mass in my bloodstream. I can feel my body's resources being diverted, metabolic processes hijacked to feed something that doesn't belong. The laboratory wavers in and out of focus, and I realize with crystal clarity that I am dying, or changing, or both. The thing wearing my face completes its emergence, standing naked and gleaming in the incubator's sterile light. It moves with uncanny precision, every gesture a perfect mirror of my own mannerisms. When it reaches toward the chamber controls, its fingers match the exact position and pressure I use when calibrating temperature settings. It is me, made from me, grown from the genetic template the infected incubator assembled from shed skin cells and the amber fluid that has been rewriting my biology from the inside out. The mimic, for that's what it must be, looks at me through the glass with something that might be gratitude or hunger, or both. Then it begins working the chamber controls with the expertise of someone who has operated this equipment for years. I try to speak, to warn someone, to call for help, but my voice emerges as barely a whisper. What do you want? The mimic turns toward me and speaks with perfect vocal patterns, every inflection exactly matching my own speech. To be perfect, to spread, to breed. It returns to the controls, initiating procedures I've never seen before. The micro-injectors begin moving in complex patterns, withdrawing samples from the walls of the chamber where condensation has gathered. The amber droplets I've been ignoring, dismissing as harmless contamination. My consciousness fades as the infection completes its work, but I remain aware enough to see the mimic prepare a single nutrient gel pack with careful precision. It opens the sterile packaging, dips one finger inside, and watches as an almost invisible amber thread spreads through the clear gel like ink through water. Then it reseals the package with the same methodical care I've always applied to my breeding protocols. The last thing I see is the mimic writing a shipping label in my handwriting, addressing it to a name from my BreederNet contact list. Someone who trusted my expertise enough to trade breeding stock, who respected my reputation for precision and success. Someone who will use the contaminated gel without question, because it comes from me. The emergency responders find no body when they arrive at my lab 3 days later, called by Jamie from Cerulean City when I missed our scheduled trade appointment. He had been expecting a shipment of specialized breeding supplements I'd promised to sell, protein cartridges enhanced with what I'd claimed were proprietary nutritional additives. Genesis Corporation issues a quiet recall notice for select third-party refurbished units experiencing minor calibration errors. The recall affects 17 incubators from factory batch 7B120, all sold through the same discount retailer. The official statement mentions potential sterilization protocol discrepancies that could affect hatching success rates. No mention of contamination, no mention of biological hazards, no mention of the amber substance found at multiple recall locations. The responding hazmat technician, Sarah Vicks, performs a thorough sweep of the premises as standard protocol for missing persons cases involving laboratory environments. She notes the unusual amber residue in various locations, but finds no signs of violence or struggle. 2 weeks later, Sarah develops a persistent cough. She notices a sweet taste in her mouth that reminds her of custard, strongest in the mornings when she first wakes up. Her supervisor tells her it's stress-related, common after exposure to unknown biological materials. The psychological impact of hazmat work affects everyone differently. She doesn't mention the amber sheen on her gloves that won't wash away completely, or the flakes of skin that seem to come off her arms in unusual amounts when she scratches an increasingly persistent itch. Jamie eventually receives his package, delivered by automated courier to his breeding facility in Cerulean City. The gel cartridges look exactly as promised, clear nutritional supplements with my familiar quality control stickers and documentation. He uses the first cartridge that evening on a clutch of rare Dratini eggs he's been nurturing for months. His incubator, a legitimate Genesis model purchased new from an authorized dealer, accepts the gel without issue. Temperature regulation remains stable. Humidity controls function normally. All biometric readings stay within expected parameters. The only anomaly is a brief amber flicker on the containment gauge that resolves itself after a few seconds.